After we'd gotten inside and changed back into clothes, we met back in the kitchen. I'd passed Orlando and Dean chatting in hushed tones about something on the way back outside, and I could hear Tyson kicking up a fuss about something somewhere else in the house. Sal was sitting on one of the stools next to the island in the middle of the room, warming his hands with a mug of something hot.
Hungry?
I could eat. He nodded briefly before going over to the fridge and pulling out some sandwiches, setting it on the island and sitting back down before gesturing to the empty stool beside him. Oh, thanks.
Orlando made these before he went off with Dean. They're planning something, although you didn't hear it from me.
How long was I gone? he had time to come in here and make a bunch of sandwiches and then leave? He was with us. Oh, we don't know how. At least, if anything, now Dave having blackout sessions is like it's like suddenly an explanation for the strange conveyance of time up until now. If this was happening more, it might be easier to tell or to accept. But planning what though? Another swimming lesson, or you know? Sal drummed his fingers against his mug before replying.
Something for you.
That sounds like Orlando. But why Dean? He would never do anything for me. He just wants to fuck me, but only in the way where we date first, but only after I ask. Wait a minute.
Can I be blunt?
Sure.
Dave, listen. You like Dean, right?
People keep telling me I do. Yeah? Why?
He really likes you. More than he's liked anyone since I've known him anyway.
Which is how long precisely? I don't have a good sense of this. I'm not crazy, right? Sal met Dave at the gym? Like he was the weird crocodile that started standing in the rain?
Yes, yeah.
But he also knows Dean long enough to be like besties. Apparently.
I had some concerns that this might be something fleeting, but he's been talking up how he'll finally take you out somewhere nice like you deserve. Eventually.
I'm on a level with you, Sal. I've talked to Dean twice this trip. One of the conversations was about a greenhouse, which I visited with you instead.
Yeah, it's very odd.
To some extent, I can see. It feels like I can see why games often contribute to more concrete routes than constant permutations, because then they have a better sense of what's been conveyed in the narrative. Because so far, we just keep getting told that Dean and I like each other, and that's the extent of our relationship.
One of the other things about this is that, we haven't seen a lot more we haven't seen a lot more about Dean liking us that over the course of this novel. I thought maybe it would ramp up as it goes on, but I think an even bigger problem is that we're constantly being told by other people that Dean likes us away from Dean. We never see Dean talking about us. We never see Dean purposefully interacting with us. In fact, most of his interactions have been with other people.
Yeah. The most overtly romantic or flirty conversation was strangely right after either Benson or Orlando died, I think, and Dean starts bizarrely talking about taking care of us or something in a weirdly romantic way in the middle of an upsetting scene where it's just a really inappropriate time to do that. And that's one of the primary times he's done it. But just notably, we have Dave's inner monologue, and he just doesn't feel anything for Dean as far as we can tell. He just does not react to his presence. He does not There's no flutters, there's no weight in his chest, there's no yearning, there's no attraction. He doesn't have like some strong tendency to he doesn't state an internal preference for the idea of hanging out with Dean before choices happen. The biggest one that happened ever, I think, is this last choice where it's like strangely pushing for him to hang out with Dean. But in that one, it was that he was worried about him. Like it sounded like he was unsafe what was happening right now, and not like how badly he wants to spend time with Dean. Like it's not really there. And the fact that we have his internal monologue doesn't even just count as like, it doesn't even feel like a lack of evidence of his attraction to Dean. It feels like counter evidence to his attraction with Dean, the extent to which he just does not seem to care about him. And that exists outside of the fact that we just happened to not choose Dean's options throughout the narrative. Like, he doesn't think about Dean in a way that implies that he cares much about them. We just got the exposition about how he kind of feels this way about Dean, like all the way back on like the bus, and then that they just let that be like the placeholder explanation to just account for the whole game so far, without like the texture being there throughout. So it just doesn't feel, it doesn't work really in that way.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. It's just really odd that it's pushing just overall these character dynamics that I don't think, like, if I had to summarize the biggest issue with this game, other than the time stuff and just like the structure, I think the biggest problem is that it introduces character dynamics to us and it tells us them. Yeah. And it often implies things that have happened without showing them to us, and also without ever actually engaging with those dynamics. And what I mean by that isn't just we don't get enough time with Dean, or like, you know, how are we supposed to know Dean and Sal were best friends? Like, those are all symptoms of a greater problem, which is just that characters are interacting in ways that are extremely arbitrary, and the game keeps segmenting them off to us and then telling us their relationships without letting those relationships form in front of us. So it's like, a good example of this is like, we all split up into teams for the medals and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, there needs to be a reason for us to be able to team with people, right? It's because it's our choice. But then like most of the other teams just kind of seemingly happened by coincidence. Like, it's just like, you're standing next to me, I'll be your teammate.
Yeah, and we didn't get much explanation for why these people were teams, or how well those teams went, or if those teams caused friction. Like, that's a big storytelling moment for your cast of characters. And the most we got, I think, is that somebody just opted out of the entire challenge. Like, someone just stood outside and was like, whatever, he'll get it. I think it was like I think Roswell was like, Orlando will get it. He'll be fine. It's all competitive, but that's like the most of the dynamic we got out of this. And it's like, a lot of these are opportunities to specifically explore these characters. That's like why you would make scenes like that. And in particular, like, as somebody who is currently alternating between playing this with you and Echo with Stephanie, and I'm in the middle of finishing my final route, that is a game. Echo is a game defined entirely by its character dynamics and constantly reinforcing them. Like, you cannot get through a route of Echo with having a very strong sense of how Leo feels about Chase. Like, it's not like a mysterious surprise that happens in one of the routes that Leo's into Chase and so on. Like, specifically, there's a confrontation before the route split about their unresolved issues and so on, and you learn more about that in different routes and side stories and so on in a textural way, but you can't like dodge learning what their character dynamic is and what their unresolved history is and how long they were together and so on and so forth. Like, it's only reinforced again and again and again, and it's ever present in all of the different routes. And each route gives you, even though they're not about Leo, each route kind of gives you a different angle to glimpse their relationship and the toxic dynamic that both of them bring to it, and the controlling elements and all these other things. Like, there's to the point where the conversation keeps evolving. So like, not only do you have a clear idea of how characters interact and what their dynamic is, but then each time you then go and find more information out, that's just like expanding upon and adding texture to the discourse to the point where you can sit here and like really like sit here and talk about the characters and debate them and how you feel about their different issues. And people have massive different disagreements about these characters because of how textured and how they all have caveats and things to get into, and they're realized in a way that makes them feel realistic, which means that anyone can be on any, like any reader could be on any character's side in a dispute and so on. And we're 11 days in, and we're mostly just being told over and over again that Dean's into us, but we have no idea what Dean and Dave's dynamic is, and they don't seem to care about each other in like a way that you can feel moment to moment. And like Dave isn't trying to push the reader into hanging out with Dean out of these options. Like there's no like internal monologue that states a preference, and Dean isn't trying that hard to hang out with Dave, like because he's not pursuing us. So, and it's like and this could be a casualty of the super fragmented way of making it so you can pick between different characters and different routes and so on. The way the game just literally turned green at one point when we picked Sal enough, and now we just have green icons on the screen all the time. But yeah, that if the characters shouldn't be written inconsistently just because you're not in their route.
Yes, I think another thing with this too is that the game obviously is having a lot of things happen outside of our player's view, right? And we're constantly walking in on scenes that are already occurring and characters that are grouped together for whatever reason, right? But it oftentimes doesn't really trend why these characters would be together given the dynamics that we've been told about. So like a really good example of this is, again, Sal and Dean allegedly being best friends. Sure, we're in Sal's route, so we're taking time with him, right? But it's confusing that every single time we interact with Dean, he's hanging out with like Roswell and Orlando. And like, yeah, we know that they like kind of hang out, but it makes it communicate to the audience that those are the people that hang around with each other, rather than apparently these two characters that are like best friends and hang out all the time. And the same thing goes for when we encounter characters like Roswell, or when we encounter characters like Orlando. It's either we're running into them with like a mishmash group of random characters that they have kind of unclear relationships with, or we just run into them completely alone, and that's it. And there's no sense of like the anime club hangs out together all the time. Here is where they are and what they're doing when we're not watching.
Yeah,
95% of the time.
I quickly started to lose track of who was even in the anime club because it's not really a group that's reinforced.
Yes. Yeah, completely. And it's like, it's just confusing, I think, to the audience, because in terms of how we associate characters with each other, I mean, a lot of it is going to be visual, right? So it's like literally what sprites are on screen at any given point in time. It is going to create associations in our head that allow us to group characters meaningfully into their relationships. And unfortunately, I can't, the way that it has been communicated, the way that characters are grouped together, the way that we're encountering them, the way that we're interacting with them does not line up with the way that we're constantly being told that they interact, especially when it's being told to us off screen and we have no context for that dynamic. So I think that's actually why reveals like Sal and Dean are best friends don't work. And it's because it's fundamentally not the way that those characters have been presented or even allowed to occupy space together.
Like, many scenes are an excuse to group different combinations of characters, especially since a lot of them take place in common areas like the dining room, where they just have to logistically encounter each other. And so combining them in different ways lets you have different types of conversations with different textures. And so you expect people that have the most history with each other and the closest relationships to have like more their conversations would be based around like a shared history or shared interests and in jokes, and like that have a particular dynamic. and the characters often don't really have a particular dynamic. Most of Sal's interactions with Dean are him being mad about his jokes, or the most violent thing that wasn't a bad end so far. Like it's like strong counter evidence to the idea that they're big friends. And I don't know, I think about how well it was handled, for example, like in Arches, where we spent a whole chunk of the game exploring the dynamic between two main characters, and then Arturo shows up, and not only do you instantly get a read on Arturo's character, you get an instant read on what version of the main characters Arturo knew when they saw each other last, and how that's different from how they are now, and how he's specifically fucking up the dynamic of what both characters are trying to accomplish in this scene, and how how his introduction actively shakes up the character dynamic and redirects the narrative in a way that like doesn't just feel like, I, the writer, will cause an obstacle and I wrote this character as a plot device to make this happen. It's like Arturo's characterization is so well done that this is just the natural direction that things would seemingly go in at this point. And like there's a social dynamic of like discomfort between the different characters, where both characters are interfacing with Arturo differently, and the friction that causes itself. Like it's a great example of exactly how you would do have characters interact in a way that informs you about all of them at once. And I don't know how, and I'm not entirely sure how anyone does that. That's hard, but that's like an example of what you would try to do. And it's just a lot of it is just like trying to figure out how do you communicate characterization without saying it, is like the first goal, essentially. Because saying it feels like, because at some point it can work to say something, but inherently, I think a takeaway in a lot of these narratives is that whenever anyone says anything about another character, that should not be seen as word of God explanation to tell the audience what that character's like. Instead, it should be seen as it should be informative of both characters at once, because it's the perspective of a character about another character, which is informative about the character saying the thing or thinking the thing. It's like the way that Jenna talks about Carl is informative about Jenna and Carl at the same time, and increasingly damning of elements of Jenna as you go on. And like the more you play through Echo, the more you resent the way that Chase thinks about other people and so on as the character you're inhabiting and so on. Like it's not, almost never should a character be expressing a thought about another character that is just the unalloyed truth spoken by the author, and not an information that is informative about the actual person saying it.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. And it's just kind of, it's weird too, because characters often parrot these very, for lack of a better word, let's say just like concrete facts about each other, where it's like, Dean likes you. Haas was in the anime club, like that. And it's like, that's not really how friends interact. Like, friends say things about each other that are both positively embellished and negatively embellished. And when someone is constantly telling you Dean likes you, it sounds like it's the same voice coming from every single person that says it, right? Like Roswell talking to us about how much Dean likes us sounds the same as when Sal tells us allegedly that his best friend in the world has a huge crush on us and he's going to take us out to this restaurant that we care about. It's just kind of odd. It just doesn't
No one
feel
gossips
right
about anyone.
Yeah.
Like in a textural
we don't hear
way.
Anything.
Like no one's like, let's do a podcast with Toaster. He's gonna say, everyone's wrong about this thing, but not for the reason you think. Like there's no the specific informative gossip about somebody that feels like they know each other on like an intimate level as friends. Yeah. It's just, it's hard, but it does kind of just need a revamp. There just needs to be more texture there. Delete all the scenes where people talk way too much about how they handled the coffee cup for 3 pages, and replace that with textural interactions between characters. And I don't know, just another pass would be great, and that's hopefully the goal. A smile slowly crept onto my face, but it wasn't as full as it should have been. I was tired. worried that this might never happen if we didn't make it back home alive.
However,
his tone shifted, quieter, uneasy, as he flexed his fingers around the ceramic.
You do like him back, yes? To the exclusion of all others?
I don't know, have you not noticed I've been hanging out exclusively with you and Tyson this entire playthrough? And never with Dean? Ever? The question took me aback, and I didn't know how best to respond.
Dean's very much a one-man sort of guy.
You don't get to hit me with the like monogamy versus polyamory conversation about a person who's never even asked me on a date yet.
I have some concerns that you might be leading him on. How are we leading him on? We haven't talked to him at all.
How? When? How do you lead someone on without even dating them? No, Dean's great. My voice fell as I sighed out, still only holding the first sandwich I'd grabbed without taking a bite. I just wish we'd met in a different time, like the 60s, when things were
better.
Right. I don't know. He makes me happy, so that's enough, right?
It's just so weird to hear things like he makes me happy when we have never.
Yeah.
Like we don't even talk about it. We don't talk about the nice things he does. It's
a description of a character dynamic that feels not just surprise. Like it feels contradictory. It feels like it's literally not the truth. The scene feels like a lie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, completely. I mean, I think a good example of this is just like, again, we're constantly being told, Dean treats us really well and he does nice things for us and he really likes us. But like, we're never told what those things are. And even if it doesn't show us those things, it would read differently if Dave was like, yeah, like the last time I went on a vacation, you know, Dave and I rented an Airbnb in Lake Tahoe and it was fun. Like he literally never talks about things that Dean has ever done. So when he says like, Dean makes me happy, it's not even that we're being told, not shown it. It's that we don't even know what those things that he did that made him happy were.
Yeah, because it's never happened.
Yeah.
Like, Dave has never found comfort in Dean in any way we've ever seen.
He hasn't even told us about anything that's happened off screen either.
I don't think he's even made Dave laugh.
No.
Like, and then at this point, like, a lot of the damage is already done. Like, they've committed this big multi-branch narrative, and that's like a nightmare to navigate. And the only way I can think to fix it is just to massively elongate the prologue. Like, just extensively increase how much characterization and ground is covered between all the people earlier on. And that has been a reoccurring thing we've talked about, because we talked about the whole Roswell and Tyson situation. Like, there are so many character dynamics that need to be ironed out so much earlier in order to just have the player understand who the characters are and what they think about each other. And also just at this point, like, if with the scenes that are already going to be here, because I assume they don't want to like restructure the game, you then have to like do something a bit akin to what I did actually like today, funnily enough, which is that we finished Cape Escape. We finished Cape Escape months ago, but today I wrote a story about Jet that's a prologue, and that's informed, and it's a prologue that takes place before the story that people have seen, but it's also informed by me having already known how it turned out, so I can go back and I can hook in things that I wouldn't necessarily have known if I had written this prologue before the story happened. And to some extent, like, that's the kind of rewrite that would really help, is just going back and filling in a lot of these gaps that just are not there. Like, there's just massive gaps of characterization that need to be filled in before you allow this like fragmenting of the story to like make it dubious whether you'd find whatever they think, like whatever they might have put in the game. Because I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe the Dean route is totally there and totally informative of this, but it's strange to refer to like if this dynamic between Dean and Dave is explored better in the Dean route, it's weird to then confront us about it in someone else's route without us experiencing that route. So we have no idea what they're talking about. And that's just not usually a problem in these kinds of stories. You don't usually get surprised by character dynamics that you haven't encountered.
Yeah, it is a little bit odd.
Yeah, because I guess it is that they're best friends, and they took a moment to signpost it by saying that like a day ago. But realistically, like it's like Sal should be questioning us about Tyson's relationship at this point, because that's the character we're actually involved with in this route. But they want to do the Dean thing, but it's just almost like de facto, like because you're in the Sal route, I don't even know what kind of dynamic you could have with Dean in this route to begin with. Huh.
Yeah.
But it's not enough.
It's not my place to say, just please don't lead him on if you're not interested. What?
Okay.
And that's another, it's just weird. It's just weird to hear that when our player choice this whole time has been explicitly not to lead him on.
Yeah.
So it's like, stop condemning us for something we're not doing.
He seemed satisfied, nodding as he drank from his cup and sighing out. I finally bit into the sandwich and sighed out, feeling a little better with the familiar taste of egg salad. Orlando knew me well. I want an egg salad. What about you, though?
Me? What about me?
I know things didn't work out with Orlando, but is there anyone you like?
Do you remember when we spoke about how sometimes it's best not to ask certain questions just in case you don't like the answer?
This is a strange dynamic. Right.
Yeah.
The next few moments we sat in silence, eating what had been left from us. What, I'm not gonna like the answer of who you like? What answer could you give that I wouldn't like? Is the answer me? That you like said no, but then now the answer is yes, and that's annoying? Is that the answer? Or am I gonna be like, oh damn, you're into Haas? We're never speaking again. Like, I just don't know what the answer could be that would make him unhappy.
About yesterday.
What about it?
So, what happens next? Do we continue investigating? Do we stop? What did you want to do?
I don't know, Sal. I've been just pondering about if it's worth giving up.
Give up? Now? Why?
What's the point? Everyone thinks I'm crazy, or that I'm asking for it by messing with the vault, so...
I don't think you're crazy. A little too self-sacrificing maybe, but crazy.
Really?
It's one thing I like about you anyway, that you're willing to help your friends at the drop of a hat. But you still need to learn when to say no.
So do give up? That was a strange thing to end just that thought on, given what we're talking about.
Really weird. Yeah.
Something about how Sal said that rubbed me the wrong way, and I found my jaw clenching. What do you mean by that? You expect me to just let stuff happen? To just let my friends die?
Come on, Dave. I didn't mean it like that.
Then what did you mean?
What I mean is that maybe you shouldn't flick from one extreme to the other. Find a balance, but don't lose yourself along the way.
The moment you want it. I whined, clutching my head, unsure what to do. Sal actively giving me, ironically, 2 different extremes in his responses and flicking back and forth. And I don't know, Sal. I don't know.
You need to relax. You need a decent rest.
But how can I? When all the stuff is going on and just... Sal suddenly slammed the kitchen island, making me jump.
Dave.
That'll help me relax.
Relax.
Relax!
This is a vacation. This is a vacation for you just as much as the rest of us. And you stressed out is stressing a lot of us out as well.
It's not a vacation. People are dying. It's 100% not a vacation for Dave. Really?
Just because you're not in the room doesn't mean we don't check in with one another. See, this is what I'm talking about.
I stared at Sal at a loss, watching as he busied himself with his drink again.
Orlando, I think, said it best. You have the weight of the world on your shoulders, and you're not willing to let anyone else bear any of the burden.
We're literally talking about the problem because I let you bear part of the burden in that I'm like, help, but this is what's happening. People, listen to me. I don't...
Tyson snapped at Roswell for putting the vacation together and how it was affecting you. Haas jumped in and chewed him out for taking it out on Roswell. Then Dean told Haas to let them fight it out.
Well, they're fighting again.
Is there anything I can do or say to help you through this? To support you somehow?
No.
Are you just saying that because you don't want to be a bother, or is that really how it goes?
Shrugging, I went to grab another sandwich and found my hand blocked by Sal, who took my hand carefully in his and gave it a gentle squeeze. How do you get used to it, Sal?
Used to what?
Living while being this sad all the time. He sighed out, shaking his head.
You find a way, Dave. Somehow, you find a way. It's never easy, and it could take years, but somehow, some way, you find peace.
I pulled my hand away and let it hang limply by my side.
I don't think that it's wrong to have a character who is flawed give advice on things that they're flawed about, but it is weird to posit that Sal, of all people, has answers to this when he is also actively still dealing with trauma in a way that is clearly not peaceful.
Yeah. How did you recover from your problems? Dave says to Sal while Sal is choking him over the pool. Like, Okay. Before I knew it, I was standing, no longer hungry, no longer in the mood to talk or really do anything other than sleep. I turned away from Sal and pushed in my chair.
What's wrong?
I think I just want to be alone for a bit.
I don't think that's a smart idea. Please, talk to me, Dave.
What is there to say? My dad is dead, your sister is dead, and it's killing me trying to stop the same happening to everyone else here, and I'm just... I sniffed, feeling the faintest moment that I could have broken then and there and cried, but didn't come. Instead, replaced by the feeling of being abnormal. I'm just here. I'm not even sure I want to be anymore. Sal didn't make an effort to stop me from leaving, and I trudged away, hugging my arms. I came away feeling like I'd let everyone down. I hardly did anything with Orlando's swimming lesson. Sal tried talking to me about it, and I brushed him off too. It wasn't too late. Going back to apologize to Sal was in the cards, but for whatever reason my body was on autopilot, away from him, and in favor of being somewhere else. Just give up, Dave. Let whatever happens, happen. The more the words echoed in my head, the more sluggish my steps became. Noise about the house I barely registered as anything other than just that. Noise. When really, all I wanted right now was some quiet. By the time I made it back to my bedroom, I was exhausted and not hungry. I would also not be hungry after I ate. Looking at this... He did literally eat already.
Yeah.
Looking at the time, chances are I'd be called down for dinner, but I didn't want to go. At some point, Orlando came in to check on me and mentioned that I should eat something, but left when I said I wanted to be alone. He lingered, but ultimately left quietly. Not that I felt up for talking anyway. The evening went by, long past dinner into the later hours of the night, all while getting closer to when I was due to meet Oswin. And then it was time. I made my way to the conservatory. After all, this was where I'd come those nights ago. From here, I'd head into the library to where we'd agreed to meet. I was a little nervous about what he wanted to show me. Pulling the books Haas showed me open the passage, I stole one last look at the room before heading to the darkness. I followed the wall, and soon... something felt off about the library. Wandering down the stairs to the table Oswin and I spoke at, I noticed the door that he used to get here, left open. Was it an invitation to follow it? We had agreed to meet, so maybe he was expecting me to meet him in the lab rather than here. It seemed odd, though, having been specific about meeting at the same time and place as the last meeting, but maybe things had changed. Carefully, I wandered into the corridor beyond, placing my hand against the wall to lead me forward. It felt rough, but down one twist of the corridor I saw a pale green light filtering in from an adjoining room. I'm just thinking, shouldn't you call out if you're meeting somebody in a place where you can't see? You just be like,
yeah.
Hey! You here? Ah, this is a safe room to be in. Evolution 1? What do you think that is?
Isn't
Evolution
that a
1.
brand of, like...
gloves
or, like, sterile pouches, I think?
Hard to make out what it says. Huh.
Spectrophotometers. They manufacture spectrophotometers, and yeah, it looks like those are plastic bag implements that interact with them, possibly, or glass slides, maybe.
Oh yeah, it could be like
latex gloves as well.
Telescope slides, microscope slides. That's right. That's the correct one.
They also do make gloves, so.
Yeah, they do look like glove boxes. When I stepped in, the smell hit me first. What traces of it I had picked up on the walk were amplified, and I was sure now that I hadn't been imagining it. Oswin? I could see him sitting at the desk, facing a monitor that seemed to be the only source of light in the room. Or at least the main one, shy of the glowing thing sitting on shelves about the room. He didn't say anything as I approached him at the desk. He didn't even move. I reached out and turned the chair around, jumping back and throwing my hands over my maw to stifle my yell. Oh!
Well,
So I think this is the bad end. I think we might have found the massacre. That's a very large knife. I guess it looks anatomically correct to how big their hands are in this game. They'd have to have giant handles for their giant knives. But it just reminds me a little bit of like the fucking Avatar mech that has its own combat knife. That bizarre element of the ending of Avatar, where the evil man with the scars on his face has a giant mech that itself has a combat knife that it holds separately from its hand instead of having a knife hand. And it's just a giant knife, only for that mech. I was stunned, staring at what I was seeing, eyes trailing down to the knife sticking out of his chest. What? How? Why? When did... Well, I guess Haas is a murderer, or there's an entire extra character that we've never met. Because there's a very narrow list of people that can come down here, especially with the butler gone, who would have otherwise been the primary suspect. I took a step back, looking about the lab. Ooh. They're scratchy, but I do like having more CGs regardless. Just seeing locations a bit. Yeah, I'd be a little worried right now, too.
Yeah.
Nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary, at least as far as spooky laboratories went. There was another room off to the side, a cabinet against the wall, but I couldn't think right with how suffocating the smell was. Who's this?
I wondered when you'd come.
Who's there?
I gave him the wrong voice. You wondered when you'd come?
Nothing prepared me for that. What the fuck?
The rat mafia is coming to get us.
This little tiny rat man. I assume it's a literal lab rat that is now standing up and like has gained splinter level intelligence or something. Kawa. Bunga. I've seen the movie too many times. I looked at the desk. A large black rat stared at me with its beady eyes, a collar around its neck.
Welcome to the crime scene, David Holloway Jr.
So Dad's name is Dave, also?
Yeah.
Okay. What?
I think that was established.
How did you... Who killed Oswin?
You really don't know.
I shook my head quickly, staring back at his body. I don't know anything. Ever. How long has he been like this?
Few days.
And no one's just...
Benson was sent away by the master, leaving him vulnerable. He assumed this would happen.
But if he knew this was going to happen, then why?
He had his reasons. Reasons that we'll never know.
What?
Now.
I thought that was just a typo.
What? I looked at Oswin, covering my mouth.
What did you want to do now?
It's the only character that gives you any sense of guidance. What the fuck do you mean? What do I want to do now? None of us know what we're doing. We don't know what the goal is.
Step 1, smash the rat with a mallet.
Yeah, the
Step
rat's
2,
suspicious.
Leave. Leave now.
Yeah, Osmond still hasn't told us why we should stay here. And now he's dead. So what do you mean, what do I want to do now? We were never given a mission. I just... I'm still so torn up over the fact that you finally have your meeting with Oswin last time, and he still does not give you a mission, or a reason to stay, or any idea of what we're trying to accomplish. He's just like, I have evil toxins. I got a disease in my lab. Woo! I've killed thousands of children. See ya. That's not helpful. They didn't answer anything. I don't know. I didn't expect to see him dead and like this.
Did you want the autopsy report?
What? But who could have... What?
I did it myself. Seemed only fitting.
How do you do an autopsy when he hasn't even been moved?
Yeah, you can't do an autopsy without cutting open a body.
Yeah, you have to strip him
kind
and
of the
cut him
point of
open
an
on a
autopsy.
slab, unless you... I scanned him with my robot eyes. Thanatos? Okay.
Dumb.
Master called me Thanatos if we're doing this. Seems only fair given I know your name.
Yeah. How do you know my name anyway?
$1 million question, that one. One that I don't think we're at that point.
What? One that I don't think we're at that
No,
point.
yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
You have a murder to solve.
You mean it wasn't Benson? Look at him!
Okay.
Does he have a scar? Is he Thanatos because he's a zombie rat?
Zombie
was
rat?
he revived?
I have no
Was
idea.
he was he autopsied?
That's on you to figure out. Either him or one of your friends. Unless you think you could pick up that hunting knife in his chest.
Maybe pull that hunting knife out from his chest.
This is what I'm here for. Because the character dynamic stuff isn't working very well. I just want the game to get unhinged faster. Because that's where things get really entertaining. So I'm so pleased that there's just a bizarre talking zombie rat named Thanatos. Okay, yes, like you promised me a dragon mafia at some point. Let's fucking go. Another look at the knife made it seem like that rat couldn't even lift it, given how thick the handle was, let alone how hefty it likely was as well. This is making my stomach churn.
Guess I'm just used to it. Now, cause of death is a knife to the chest. His own knife, no less.
Yeah, I can see that.
Don't get smart with me. Look at the angle of the knife.
That's literally impossible. Is that important?
Someone didn't care his ribs were in the way. Just plunged that thing down into his chest right there.
Wait, but if he was sitting there and they stabbed him in the front,
Figured it out?
Oswin let himself be killed. That does not have to be true.
Yeah.
You can 100% just
You just
surprise
push into
stab
him and
somebody.
Yeah, get him to sit down.
Got it in one. You'd think that maybe he'd have been drugged, but can't see any injection points, and all the stuff here's locked up.
Nothing about being stabbed in the front says that it was voluntary. What about if they spiked his coffee or something?
Thought of that too. Checked and nothing. Must have been holding off, given Benson wasn't bringing him refreshments.
Where were you? But that doesn't make any sense. Why would he let himself be killed? Who would want to kill him?
Someone wanting revenge. The little Hammond lot aren't the most liked. He told you about his little experiment with the kids, yeah?
He did, yeah.
Could be someone found out and was looking for revenge. Could be something else. Who knows?
You sure you didn't see anything? Thanatos looked around the room, tail falling still behind him. He seemed to be taking in the laboratory before looking to me again.
Nothing. Normally would have, but didn't this time. Might have been sleeping.
Might have? You're not sure? I shot him a look. It sounded like a lie, but with no evidence, it didn't seem right to call him on it. A talking rat was hard enough to process, let alone explain to the others. But if it wasn't the rat, and it wasn't Benson, it had to be someone else in the house. I looked to the ceiling, feeling uncertain.
So you got a choice to make. You telling your friends about this?
I shook my head. Why? Not yet. Not with so little to go off of, but it couldn't have been any of them, right?
I'd find Benson before making that call. Could still be in the house and you'd never know.
Didn't you literally just
Ow.
say Benson left and he couldn't be related to this?
Yeah. Benson was gone, so he was defenseless, but Benson could still be here, somewhere. Where? Why? What? Shuddering at the thought, I looked over my shoulder at the door of the lab. What if he was lingering in the dark? What if he was in another passage, just waiting? But even then, why kill Oswin? What motive would he have? We don't know, because we don't know anything about Benson. Or
Yeah.
we have nothing. This remains an incredibly low data murder mystery.
My master was stabbed, clean and simple. But as for why, that's on you to solve.
What will happen to you?
I'll be around. I can feed myself, and I have free run of the house.
Is that why the door is left open?
Your guess is as good as mine. I can move about without it, though. So feel free to close it up when you're done here.
we just introduced the little rat. This is the thing in the story now. Okay. I'm so happy. I looked about the place. It seemed to be a cold and lonely place. Dark, too. But that was likely just because the lights were off, as they did exist attached to the ceiling. Why'd that sentence keep going?
I don't know. There have been a lot of weird sentences in the past 5 minutes, as well as typos.
It was just normal to end with the lights are off, but then it added words, but the words didn't say anything like that. What is... Once again, there's like an additional explanation added to the end of a sentence that only makes me more confused, because it doesn't... I don't know what it was trying to clarify.
Yeah.
Did we
just saying the
establish that
lights
the
are off
ceiling...
lets us know there are lights here, so
Did we
you don't need to
establish that all
specify.
of the ceiling electronics are malfunctioning? Like, what do you mean? What happens now? I looked at the desk, but Thanatos was gone, probably scurried off somewhere to do something. Once again, that sentence should have been half as long and just stopped. Just because it's just... he's off to do something with his little rally white ways. As we know, that rat's so busy and has so many tasks to complete around the house. So I'm like, what? No, the Batman comment. You just go like, I turned, but then he was gone. End of thought. Then turned to Oswin, I wondered what the best thing to do was. It reminded me of when we were looking for the gun. Something Haas said about how I'd brought it up with the group. If I raised it with everyone, would that give the killer a chance to hide evidence? But if it was Benson, then it'd be safe to bring it up with them, right? Once again, the scent of decay hit my nose and I retched, quickly turning away from the body and covering my mouth and nose with both hands. I hurried out of the room, closing the door behind me in an attempt to stop, the smell assaulting my nose. In the dark, I slumped against the door, my mind racing and my heart beating in my chest. The reality of what I'd just seen starting to sink in, and I clutched my head, wailing into the darkness. The only silver lining was that it wasn't one of my friends that had died, but it wasn't much of one. Did this count as trauma? Oh, right. Would there be a password to use to stop him from dying? Okay.
Maybe trauma?
I understand where we went with this, but I was like, what? Like having that thought come first, I was like, yes, Dave. See, finding someone that you've met stabbed to death counts as trauma. I just didn't know. I stumbled back to the passage the way I came, through the library, and closing the entry to it from the conservatory behind me. Yeah, so that's a very narrow list of suspects. So he should be suspecting Haas, because literally no other characters have been introduced besides Haas and Benson. So I'm worried that he hasn't, but we'll have to see.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that was fun.